Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. This one I'll be going over the Week 6 waiver wire. We're through 5 weeks here, and every single week we seem to be getting a lot of new information, a lot of surprises. Seems like we're having some sort of weird weeks so far this season. Week 5 is sort of the first time we saw a lot of these waiver wire pickups, like these weekly fill-ins, start to matter. We typically see that as we get into buys, and it also sort of coincided with a couple of surprise injuries. We're going to see a lot of those throughout the course of the rest of the year, where players will pop up on the injury report even later in the week, and those guys end up being really valuable assets. So if there's a guy I don't talk about in this video, especially like handcuff running backs are going to be a huge emphasis here. Like we just saw last week, who's obviously going to be a huge talking point here. But like Rico Dowdle probably wasn't even picked up when your waivers ran last week. But if you added him and started him last week, you got like 30 fantasy points out of him, and he maybe was the reason why you won a game. So make sure you still tune into all that sort of stuff throughout the course of the week, because being the first, like a lot of leagues, they just have open free agency after waivers run. So being tuned in, being the first one to your free agency to grab those guys when news drops gives you a huge leg up. So that's obviously something to take away here. Of course, if you guys have any specific add or drop questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go position by position, tell you guys what I think about the waiver wire options this week. And then again, if there's anything I don't talk about, just ask me a question in the comments. I'm happy to interact with you guys there. It's part of what makes this fun for me. So yeah, let's just get into it, guys. We'll start things off here with the quarterback position. The number one ad for me, and he's probably rostered, but he was a pretty common drop last week because of the bye. That'd be Caleb Williams. He's a legit option. He's scrambling a lot more this season than we've seen. Just you feel a lot more confident in the offense in general, just under Ben Johnson. I know they haven't necessarily put together some full games other than their week against the Cowboys, but Caleb Williams looks a little bit better so far this season, and I just like the system a whole lot more. They also don't really get anything going on the ground with DeAndre Swift or anything, so it has to be all on the shoulders of Caleb Williams. He's playing well enough, and off of a bye as well, you should expect even a further step forward. They've had 2 weeks to sort of assess and improve, and a Commanders matchup in Week 6 is exciting, and I think Caleb Williams is like a weekly starting option every single week the rest of the way. So definitely he should be rostered for sure. And then actually there's similar names to last week, but Jackson Dart maybe didn't get picked up. We're going to continue to see him run the ball quite a bit. It's also going to be a situation where this is not a Giants team that's going to win a lot of games the rest of the way, so you're going to see a lot of negative game scripts like we saw this last week, where we saw Jackson Dart drop back to pass 47 times. Every time he drops back to pass, it's an opportunity for fantasy points. I think he'll have some really fantasy viable weeks just because he's going to run the ball, throw the ball so much. Not going to get a whole lot going downfield because the receivers here suck, but Dart's a guy you could stream for sure. Sam Darnold, probably the priority ad other than Caleb Williams, just looks really good. He lost the duel to Baker Mayfield, but it really wasn't his fault. He had over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, just playing really good football, and gets a matchup against the Jaguars in Week 6. That does not scare you at all in terms of using him as a streamer, and honestly, the way he's playing, he might be even better than a streaming option. And then lastly, this one's a little bit gross, but Justin Fields, I just feel like I have to mention him. Ended up with a good fantasy game. I know it was really gross. He didn't play very well. I think he might actually get dropped even after a really great fantasy week, but don't drop him. This week, matchup's not fantastic. They're going across the OCs. They're going to play the Broncos in London, so you don't love that in Week 6, but Week 7 and 8 are Carolina and Cincinnati. So for 2 weeks, I think you're going to get a lot of fantasy production out of Justin Fields. Having a 2-week stretch back-to-back like that, that's pretty glorious. And even against the Broncos, you could play him and do worse. Like, they're going to lose. They're going to be trailing. You might get another garbage time fourth quarter where he just goes out there and does enough for you. So Fields is a weekly streaming option whenever you need him. And, I don't think they're going to bench him because they don't have anything to go to, right? It doesn't make sense for them to look and see what Tyrod Taylor has to offer. So as long as he's healthy, you're going to get him out there every single week. And he's good enough on the ground that he's probably going to be okay for you guys if you want to use him. Moving on to probably the most important position this week, but the running back position obviously has a ton of value right now. Rico Dowdle probably got picked up last week, but it's certainly possible that he wasn't a popular waiver ad because we didn't know a whole lot about Chuba's injury going into when waivers ran last week. I believe I maybe touched on him briefly in the waiver video last week, but he wasn't like a priority ad by any means. Went out there and had 23 carries, I believe, for 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, just absolutely fantastic. Hats off to Rico Dowdle. He played phenomenal. Looked just really, really good. It was against the Dolphins, so I don't want to overhype it, but 206 yards is 206 yards. So Dowdle looked awesome, and we don't know exactly what the status of Chuba Hubbard is. He's basically listed as day-to-day, so it's possible that he comes back early, but it's a calf injury with Hubbard, so it makes a lot of sense for them to really play it safe. They gave Chuba a huge contract. He's clearly a big part of their future. And with how Rico played, there's no reason for them to rush Chuba back, and Rico might be set up for a fantastic revenge game against Dallas next week. If he's available, he's probably a top 15 option just for this week. Maybe like a flex viable option the rest of the way. Like he's good enough. He's going to get enough work. It's probably going to make the whole backfield really muddy once Chuba's back. Or probably like a 50-50 split on a pretty mediocre offense. But as long as he's getting everything, he's going to be awesome. Rashad White, he's just good. I know people like to hate on him and say he's not a very good player, but every time he gets opportunities, he produces. He's not the best runner between the tackles, but he's a really good pass catcher. The Bucs like him a lot. Like it's just that Bucky Irving's so good that of course you can't keep him off the field. But Rashad White's a really good player whenever he gets opportunity. We're going to get at least one more week with Bucky Irving not on the field. He's got a foot and a shoulder injury that's apparently worse than the foot injury. Bucky, we know for sure he's probably missing this week against the Niners. Those are some tricky injuries, foot and shoulder injuries. Like you could easily take another hit on the shoulder, miss another couple of weeks. Like Rashad White needs to be rostered for sure. I think he's a guy that actually has value the rest of the way, and it would make some level of sense. But the way that the Bucs are playing, their record's great. They're clearly playing for the playoffs. This isn't a division that they should be in danger of losing. It makes a lot of sense for them to scale back Bucky's workload just a little bit and give Rashad White a lot of work because he's a good player. He can certainly fill in for them on passing downs, and they want to keep Bucky healthy. So I think Rashad White is going to really fall into like that flex with benefits category where he's a guy you can play if you need to as like a low-end running back 2 on a bye week, and then whenever Bucky Irving's gone, Rashad White's like a top 12 play. So I love him there. Michael Carter for the Cardinals. We got Trey Benson. He was placed on IR, so we know he's at least going to miss 3 more weeks. It kind of sounded like the injury was more significant than that, so we'll see. But at least for the next 3 weeks, you got Michael Carter and really nobody else here in Arizona. Like DeMarcado and Michael Carter were splitting touches. DeMarcado with the brain fart of the year. Well, I guess the second one you had Adonai Mitchell. But like dropping the ball on the 1 yard line as a fringe rosterable player in the NFL is really going to be a career nuke. We saw Adonai Mitchell not play this week for the Colts. I bet you see DeMarcado. I wouldn't be shocked at all if DeMarcado got cut. He probably won't, but DeMarcado is not going to be a focal point of this offense going forward. It's just hard to come back from that. Michael Carter, it wasn't fantastic, but if he's getting all the work, you're going to get Bam Knight getting involved some. You could look at him, but like Michael Carter's clearly the guy. He's a guy that's going to get 15 to 20 touches. You can play him if you need to, and he's not bad in this offense. And this team in Arizona, there's not a whole lot of inspiration there, but I think you could play Michael Carter as like a low-end running back 2, at least until Benson's back, if he does come back. This one sucked. Marion Hampton, when I looked with a high ankle sprain, he's getting placed on IR, so he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. That really sucks. Hampton really was turning the corner, and they really could have used him at the end of that game. But in his absence, you're going to have Hassan Haskins and Kimani Vidal. Vidal was on the practice squad. Haskins made the roster over him. Haskins also, just Dick Harbaugh was his coach in college, so Harbaugh and Haskins clearly have some chemistry there. Harbaugh likes him. I think Haskins is the guy you want. I think they're both probably not going to be fantastic. This is going to be a team that's going to probably have to be even more pass happy, just because neither one of these running backs is good enough to really command a whole lot of work. Their offensive line is really struggling as well, so it's going to be like a volume-dependent play. You're basically hoping Haskins is the guy you want. You'll play him as a low-end running back 2 and hope he falls in the end zone. If he doesn't, you'll probably get like 10 carries for 30 yards and 2 catches for 20, and you'll be a little bit sad, but you could do worse there. Kendre Miller, I want to mention him every single week until he's more rostered. He just continues to get more and more involved. I would argue he looks better than Alvin Kamara right now. Alvin Kamara just doesn't look very good, not very explosive. There's also a great chance that Alvin Kamara gets traded at some point before the trade deadline. I don't think that's getting talked about enough. That's certainly on the table. And if that were to happen, Kendre Miller, this is a team that's playing really fast in New Orleans. There's a lot of plays, a lot of opportunity for fantasy points, and Kendre Miller looks good, so I like him quite a bit. And then Isaiah Davis, last guy we'll talk about. He's talented. He's a really good pass catcher, and he's big enough that I think if Breece Hall ever went down, he would be a workhorse in this Jets offense. Not that the Jets offense is very good, but being the pass catcher on a bad team, pretty good for being a running back there. Like, you're going to get plenty of negative game script opportunities where you're catching the ball. Not to mention another scenario here, Breece Hall could easily be traded at some point in the season. I wouldn't like the Chiefs, the Texans. There are plenty of teams that could use Breece Hall, and the Jets aren't one of them, right? They're not going to make the playoffs. They're 0-5. I think they're the only 0-5 team, by the way, in the NFL. So, Isaiah Davis should be rostered. And then I guess one more guy, I didn't put him on the list, but he was on bye last week, but Kyle Monangai, just keep an eye on him if you've got an empty roster spot. He was getting a little bit more involved before the bye week, and DeAndre Swift hadn't really done a whole lot to that point or to this point. He's been okay for fantasy, but he's not been very efficient on the touches he's being given. If they chose to make a change, it would kind of make sense for that to happen after the bye. So just keep an eye on that. Like I think Monange would be a guy to stash on your bench because he could end up being like a popular waiver ad next week. Next, we've got the wide receiver position. Pretty dead this week, honestly. There's not a whole lot of guys that get me super excited. The one guy probably rostered, but Wan'Dale Robinson. He had Darius Slayton lead this game with a hamstring injury, so Wan'Dale was already super necessary to the offense, and now you've got no receiver. You got Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt. None of those guys are going to command targets. Wan'Dale Robinson is at least good enough to get utilized underneath. Both tight ends are going to be involved. They're going to have to throw the ball to the backs as well, but Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be the clear target leader in the offense. They're probably not going to drop back to throw the ball 47 times every single week, but we've seen Wan'Dale be a nice PPR scam before. That could certainly happen again. Calvin Ridley, I'll mention him. He was a popular drop candidate. He'd been playing through an injury, and also Cam Ward has been horrendous so far this season, but I think he's sort of reestablished himself as the clear wide receiver one in Tennessee. Like, don't go trading for Calvin Ridley or anything, but if he got dropped, he needs to be on rosters because if Cam Ward continues to progress, which he should, can't really get any worse than he was over the first 4 weeks of the year. Calvin Ridley should be the wide receiver one for the offense there, and then it could be an easy thing where we look back on it at the end of the year like, oh, duh, it was just going to be a slow start because it was a rookie quarterback, and then Calvin Ridley ends up being like a wide receiver 3. So that's possible. I think he should be rostered. Trey Tucker kind of seems like the wide receiver 1 in Las Vegas. Like, Jacoby Myers just isn't getting it done, really. Geno looks horrendous, but when he is throwing the ball, he seems to be looking for Trey Tucker. I don't know why I said Trey Rucker. But it's Trey Tucker. He should be the guy that you're looking for there. I just think he's a guy, he gets utilized downfield. They're kind of manufacturing some touches for him as well. He's fast. I think he's a guy you could play if you needed to. And with how bad this Raiders defense is, there's going to be a lot of negative game scripts. And as long as Bowers is out, there's a lot of target opportunity there. Josh Downs, not a very inspiring option, but we saw a season high route share this week. He ran 72% of the routes. Basically, you need the Colts to run a lot more 3 wide receiver sets for him to be good because in 2 wide receiver sets, you're not getting him on the field. But when they run 3 wide receiver sets, Josh Downs is good. He's a good player, and it's just one of those scenarios, like similar to like Jaden Reed, where it's frustrating because I think if he had like 100% snap share or whatever, he could actually be a really good fantasy asset. But the Colts just don't want to use him like that, and why would they change anything? They've been so good. So you don't need to pick him up, but he's a guy you could play in a pinch if you needed to. Last 2 guys, Kendrick Bourne. The only way I'm playing him is if both Jennings and Pearsall miss, but he clearly has chemistry with Mac Jones. Mac Jones and him both had a really good year. Like Mac Jones' rookie year in New England, we saw them sort of rekindle that chemistry this last week. Kendrick Bourne's also just always been good when given a lot of opportunity. I think you could play Kendrick Bourne again if you needed to. If one of Jennings or Pearsall missed, he'd be a really low-end option, but you could play him if you were in a pinch. Like, there are worse options, and then it's not the worst matchup this week coming up, so you could certainly go there. And then you get Torrey Horton in Seattle. Just want to mention him again. Continues to look good. Scored again this week. The Seattle offense looks really good, especially with how Sam Darnold is playing. I think they could maybe sustain 2 wide receivers, and it would make some level of sense for Horton to sort of flip-flop Cooper Kupp at some point this year. I think Torrey Horton could be a guy that you might be looking as like a low-end flex option next couple of weeks, and if he does progress, I think he could be legitimately good. So he's a guy that should be at least kept an eye on. Next, we got tight end here. Another pretty thin position to go over, but Mason Taylor, I talked about him last week. He is a clear priority ad here. The thing is, he's just the very clear number 2 target in this Jets offense. Having the number 2 target in an offense at tight end ends up being pretty fantasy viable more often than not, just because if you're a tight end that's getting like a 20% target share, things are just going to work out. Not going to get 11 targets every single week, not going to catch 9 passes every single week, but the Jets are going to be losing every single week, basically. So you'll have a lot of negative game scripts. They're throwing the ball quite a bit. Mason Taylor, clearly the second guy in the passing game, so you've got to roster him. He's a guy you could stream every single week if you needed to. AJ Barner, I think he's talented. I know people are excited about Elijah Arroyo, but I do think that AJ Barner is probably the tight end that has the most fantasy upside here in Seattle. He's athletic, he's big. They clearly want to utilize him in the red zone. We saw a season-high target share this week. I think AJ Barner's a guy to keep an eye on as a guy that could take a step forward. Had a sneaky good rookie year last year, too. That's part of why they were comfortable getting rid of Noah Fant, who's by no means a bad player, right? So AJ Barner's a guy that definitely I want to keep an eye on. And then Theo Johnson. Again, I talked about how with Mason Taylor, if you're the number 2 target in an offense at tight end, you got a pretty good shot at being fantasy viable. Honestly, Theo Johnson could be the number 1 target in New York. It's probably Wan'Dale there, but like The Giants are just missing bodies there. They just lost Darius Slayton to a hamstring injury. We don't know how significant that is, but you're not going to have Malik Neighbors there. This is a team that just clearly needs bodies that can catch the ball, and Theo Johnson is one of them. So he's certainly a guy that should be on rosters going forward, and you could stream him in the right matchup, although I don't want to do it this week against the Eagles. And lastly, but certainly not the least important, just because we've all seen how big of a difference defenses can make in fantasy. I played the Giants defense in an important league last week, got me 0 points. That's why I lost. So we want to make sure we're making good decisions on defenses here. This week, I got a couple of decent options. Nothing that really stands out like we've had in previous weeks, but you got the Eagles. They could have potentially been dropped this last week if people were afraid of the Broncos for some reason. They get a matchup against the Giants this week. Off of a loss, there's no way the Eagles lose that game. So the Eagles are probably going to play really well on defense. The Giants turned the ball over 5 times last week. I think you're in a good spot there. The Broncos honestly could have been dropped. They had a matchup with the Eagles. I would have been scared to play the Broncos this last week, and I personally generally like to avoid rostering 2 defenses. The Broncos could have been dropped in a lot of leagues last week. They play the Jets this next week. They should be phenomenal. In London, those are typically lower scoring games as well, so I'd be excited about that. You get the Packers coming off of a bye. They were a popular option. It would have been advisable to hold them, honestly. But this next week they play the Bengals. Jake Browning, sounds likely that he might get benched this week. The backup there is Brett Ripien. They've got Mike White on the practice squad as well. The Bengals are going to struggle at quarterback. They just honestly make a trade for somebody, whether it's Jameis or Russ or Dalton or Kirk Cousins. They need somebody there because this team's at 2-3. They're not out of it yet, especially in that division. But if they keep losing games because of how Browning's playing, they might be out of it pretty soon. So that being said, the Packers are going to dominate them this week. There's no way they make a move really significantly by Sunday. The Patriots, they get to play the Saints this next week. Because how the Patriots kind of shut down the Bills' offense, which is really phenomenal. The Patriots played great. They're going to get better and better. Mike Vrabel does a great job, at least on the defensive side of the ball. He always seems to get more out of his guys than what they really seem to offer. And with Christian Gonzalez back, this is a much different defense in New England. So I like New England, especially against New Orleans. New Orleans, I know they won this last week, but we know they're bad. So that's a good matchup. And then the Rams, if they're still available, they were a popular ad last week. Didn't work out, obviously, because they played the Niners. But if they're still available, they play the Ravens this next week. The Ravens absolutely do not scare me. The Ravens are just not good on offense at all with Cooper Rush out there. And maybe you get Lamar back, but it sounds like he'll probably be missing one more week. And it kind of makes sense for them to do that. Even at 1-4, you don't want to rush Lamar back, and your season ends if Lamar gets hurt again. So I think that the Rams should probably eat. They'll be just as good as the Houston Texans were this last week, and I feel pretty good about playing them this week. So that'll do it for the waiver wire targets this week. Up next, we'll get into trade targets. So I'll give you guys 2 videos this week. I will go over players that I'd be looking to trade for, and then a list of players I'd be looking to trade away or sell high on. So stay tuned for those ones. There's 5 videos every single week. I do this video, the waiver video, 2 trade videos, and then 2 start-sit videos every single week. I just sort of split the start-sit videos up. One comes out Thursday morning, the other one comes out like Friday night, Saturday morning, just so that I can get a little bit more information for that second set of games. But obviously, we've got to get you guys information before Thursday for that Thursday night game. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the content. Like I said, if you don't want to miss any of the future content, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. Again, 5 videos every single week. It's free every single week, so just make sure you guys are engaged, and hopefully I can stick around all year long to help you guys win some championships. So I appreciate you guys. Any specific questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you guys with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.